Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning Yerushalmi, Terumos, Perek Ches, Halacha Daled. We're learning today Daf Pei Gimel. We left off on Daf Pei Gimel Amud Aleph by the brackets, by the two dots, fifth line from the top of the Amud, Rabban Gamliel Omer Lo Yechadesh Badavar. And we're going back now to the case of the Chavius Harishayna. So we're speaking about, according to Tosfos, there were two barrels in a Reshus HaYachid, and a person that was Tamei, Vadai, touched one of them. He doesn't remember which one. So halachically, they both are rendered to have the status of a Safek Truma or Truma Tuluya. We kept on learning Shitas Rabbi Eliezer, Shitas Rabbi Yoshua, and now we're going to just quickly review Shitas Rabban Gamliel. So Rabbi Eliezer says that the same obligation of safeguarding Truma exists even on Truma Tuluya, which would mean that if these barrels that are already Tuluya, if they are uncovered, you are obligated to cover them. If they are in a place where they are more exposed to Tuma, you are obligated to put them in a place where they're going to be more protected from Tuma. Rabbi Yeshua, we learned in the Reisha, holds, Punkt Fakert, that other than directly contaminating it, you can do everything else. In other words, expose it. Bring it to a place where it will become tamei for you then to be able to burn, as is the din that we burn truma tameya. And then we have Shitas Rabban Gamliel that holds like this: you are neither required to guard it, nor are you permitted to cause it. Can't do what Rabbi Yeshua says, but you're not obligated. Okay. Now, yesterday we learned the Mishnah in Bechayres. We said on Bavli, that's Bechayres, Daf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis. We spoke out yesterday, Shitas Rab Shimon. We're speaking about a Bechar that two dinim. Din number one is it's born holy, meaning it has to be offered as a carbon. Also, you have to give it to a Kayin. Who's going to offer it as a carbon? If this Bechar gets blemished, this is the only carbon from all of the Kachim, that if it gets blemished, it does not need to be redeemed. All of the other psulei hamikdashim, even though it gets a blemish, which will disallow it to go on the mizbeach of a patavole klum, it had kedushas aguf, kedushas mizbech. You have to redeem it. You have to be paid, not by a bechar. A bechar automatically through the blemish goes out scot-free, meaning it now becomes just property of the kohen, and the kohen shechts it, and he can eat it. Case of the Mishnah in Bechayres is that there is a bechar. The Bechar has some sort of ailment. The blood somehow is not circulating in a way where it's going to die. As we said yesterday, Vadai gonna die, only Hashem knows that. But it's going to die. And the solution would be to bloodlet. Now let's get into details that we didn't speak out yesterday. Bloodletting, whether it's an animal or, lahavdil, a person, doesn't have to render that animal with a mum kavua. It doesn't have to be that way. We know the little that we remember. For those who learned the Rambam, they should remember a lot. But even from people that don't yet learn the Rambam. So if the lip is split, if the eyelid is split, okay. So if you're gonna let blood from the lip, you're gonna inflict it with a permanent mum. You can bloodlet it from another location in the body, and nothing will happen to it. And indeed, we have over there three opinions. Rabbi Yehuda will be the one that says, don't bloodlet even ba'oifen that you're trying not to give it a mum kavua. Don't do anything. We have the Chachamim that say, no. The Chachamim and Rab Shimon both are of the opinion, let's use the words we used yesterday, the animal is already a balmum. Not only that, the animal is going to die. Why is it a balmum? Because it's going to die. Can't offer this as a carbon. The Chachamim say, okay, bloodlet it, but you make your effort not to give it a mum kavua. If it happens, it happens. But that's your obligation. It means you still have to guard it from getting blemished. Rab Shimon, which is Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, he's the one that says, no, that lechatchila you can give it a mum kavua. Now, I just want to remind, the first thing we're going to have today is, it's going to be beautiful, that the Gemara here is going to say that those three Tanoim, and our three Tanoim, Chavius Rishonim, Rabbi Eliezer, Rabbi Shua, Rabbi Gamliel, each one holds like one. It's going to be a match. It's going to be brilliant. But that only is going to work if we were to understand the logic behind the Mishnah and Bechayres is all about the logic that we have behind the Mishnah and Terumos. On Daf Pei Gimel Amid Beis, on today's Daf on Amid Beis, The Gemara is going to tell you that I have psukim that are the sources for the shita of Rabbi Yehuda, the Chachamim, and Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai over there in Bechayros. Just want to say right now, the reason why the Gemara does that, and for those of us, I don't know, Kevin is not here, who miss Kachim, people that are learning Daf Yomi, they're in the middle of Kachim. The moment you give the rationale behind Mishnayos, psukim, you cannot compare one case to the other. And that's the mahalach that we're going to approach. In other words, on Amud Aleph, we're going to compare these two Mishnayos together. It's going to, al pi seichel, it's going to fit. But on Amud Beis, when we're going to suggest that that every din over there is based on a pasuk, this also means don't compare one case to the other, because it's not a logic. It's not the logic the way you think it. It's a gezeres hakosov. I just want to add one more detail, which is very important. We learned yesterday in the Mara Fulda that Rab Shimon Bar Yochai, which shita we're going to learn again today, that says that you can even bloodlet this bechar knowingly that you're going to give it a mum kavua. There's one caveat, and that is that you won't be able, you the kohen or you the owner, you won't be able to shecht it because of this mum. Even though you were allowed to do it, just like the Chachamim made a general gezeda. This is a knas midrabanan, that if a kohen inflicted a mum kavua on a bechar, you can't use it to shecht it. Even though over here, according to the Rashbi, you are allowed to do it, but the gezeda stands. That's what we said yesterday. That's what the Gemara says over there. That's what the Gemara is going to say today, beferish. Two details. Detail number one is that there isn't a new mum kavua that came automatically. Just want to add that. So again, you have the animal is sick. Rab Shimon Omer, give it a mum kavua, bloodlet it from the lip, split the lip. I don't care, save the animal. But you can't eat it because you made the mum kavua. If the animal will develop a new mum kavua by itself, then you could eat it. So it's not like you'll never be able to eat it. Another detail is that we're going to learn today a braisa that argues with this statement. There is a braisa that says that the Rab Shimon is so lenient. Not only does he say that you can lechatchila afflict it with a mum kavua, but the kohen can eat it because of the mum kavua. Gewaldig.
Off topic, but why would the Gemara address kasat adam to be mum kavua? You poke a hole, the body,
So that's beautiful. In other words, now that's what we're learning today that we didn't learn yesterday. When you bloodletting does not demand for you to give it a mum kavua. The chiddush, and that's what the Chachamim say. Bloodlet it. Just make sure you don't give it a mum kavua. Rabbi Yehuda is the most machmir. Rabbi Yehuda says, before we go to Amud Beis, where we have psukim, before we go there, when we're still in Amud Aleph, we're going to compare it to the logic over here. Rabbi Yehuda is saying that if you're going to be allowed to bloodlet it, maybe, by mistake, instead of giving it, bloodletting it from the arm, you're going to bloodlet it from the eyelid. And therefore, don't do it at all. Al yichadash b'davar. Don't touch it. And we'll see on Amud Beis that there's actually a pasuk that tells you that a bechar may never have bloodlet. You'll see it's a home. Once you have psukim, it's a different type of logic. There is a logic to the psukim, but it's not the logic we'll have in Amud Aleph. Finally, God willing, we'll have time. We're going to move on to a lot more details today and the end of today's daf in Chavi Yeshniya. Again, Chavi, we should know this forever now, halavai, because we're learning this like so many times. That over there in Chavi Yeshniya, machlekes Rabbi Eliezer and Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Eliezer, we're going to focus on Rabbi Eliezer says you may not use a keli that's tamei to capture the wine. Okay, now guys, I'll say this right now and we'll review it. Beverages, not that are tamei on the level of an av. Shikva zera is an av. Dam nida is an av. Liquids that were in the same room with a mace becomes an av. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about your normal beverage that was touched by an av that becomes a rishon. A rishon midoi raisa cannot render a keli nor adam tamei. Rishon midoi raisa can only make oichlin and mashkin tamei, even chulin anasheni. Midrabanan, a beverage that were to touch a utensil will render the utensil tamei. And one of the things that we find unique by Dine Tumah and Tara is that whenever there is a Tumah that's only midrabanan, at times, including what we're mentioning right now, the Chachamim wanted everyone to remember that this Tumah is only rabbinic. Why is that so important, Aviv? I'll tell you why. We don't paskin like Rav Meir. We don't paskin like Rab Shimon. We paskin that if there is that only truma that's tamei is allowed to be burnt. If it's not tamei, biblically you can't burn it. What were to happen if truma becomes tamei only midrabanan? So there are 6 cases which we burn them, exceptions. But the rule is you can't burn it. You know why you can't burn it? Because I'm not allowed to destroy truma. I'm not allowed to destroy kachim, but I can't eat it because it's tamei midrabanan. So you have to wait until when it becomes tamei d'oraisa. So when something is tamei, you really have to know whether it's tamei d'oraisa or tamei d'rabanan. So the Chachamim said, number 1, a beverage that's tamei on the level of a rishon, midrabanan could be metama keli. We want for you to know that the keli is only tamei midrabanan. How do you know that? So they said like this: if the liquid entered the interior space of the utensil, all of the keli is tamei. If the liquid had contact with the outer part of the keli, only the outer part of the keli is tamei, and the interior part of the keli remains completely tar, even rabbinically. And this will be a reminder that the whole tumah is only midrabanan. Once we know this, the question that we'll have at the end of today's daf is, same story, you have the wine, truma, tohira, it's going through this contraption, this wine vat. It's going to fall into the chulin tamei. You don't have time to get other utensils. What you have next to you, the Mishnah's case was a keli that's tamei. Rabbi Eliezer says you can't use it. What happens if what you have next to you is a keli that's only tamei midrabanan, meaning that only the exterior is tamei, but the interior is tar? Could you use that keli according to Rabbi Eliezer? That will be a discussion we'll have at the end of today's daf. And you can argue, Aviv, of course you can use it. Make sure none of the wine touches the outer part of the keli, and you save the chulin. Why maybe not? Because maybe some of the wine, when you capture it, will touch the outer side of the utensil, and and that Rabbi Eliezer is the one that says you cannot be metamet. So we're going to have that at the end of today's daf. Daf Pei Gimel. So we're going to dedicate today's class a little for Shalema to Nechama Bracha Bas Yechiel, and to good news, and everyone should be healthy and well. Amen. So guys, 5 lines from the top. I'm really happy we got up to the brackets because now it's a new thing. And it's very easy. Both this and that, whether we're going to logically compare these two Mishnayos and together, or whether we're going to learn a shtickle of kachim, and it's beautiful. Right? Right? You guys remember, Rabbi Eliezer holds that you are obligated to further protect this, cover it. Rabbi Yeshua says that other than direct contamination, do something to expose it to tumah. Min hakotze el hakotze. And Am Gamliel is the one that says, Al yichadosh b'dover, like we mentioned. Not you are permitted to cause it to become tamei. You can't expose it, but you have to preserve the current status. Okay. Says the Gemara, Tamon Tanina. Over here, we actually learned this yesterday. Mesechtes B'choros. In Bavli, Daf Lamed Gimel Lamed Beis, we learned the case of a Bechar Shachazei Dam, a Bechar that was seized by a congestion of blood. The solution then was bloodletting. In Russia, the solution would be give it mashke. Every culture has other solutions, and it works. The mashka for sure. I'm just kidding. You have to let blood. Okay. Now, again, a bechar, you're not allowed to afflict a bechar with a permanent blemish. So says the first Tana, Rabbi Yehuda, in the Babli in the Yerushalmi without a hay, without an aleph, without a hay, they economized. Afilu meis. Ein makizin loidam divrei Rabbi Yehuda, and the chiddush is you would argue. Hold on, that's what Yakir was saying. Bloodletting is not something that even in the majority of the cases renders the animal permanently blemished. It doesn't work that way. You stick a needle in. The needles they had then were not the needles we have today, Mistama. Today you have little needles. You don't even feel it. There, the needle was a needle. And if you stick it in the wrong place, you're gonna make the animal. Rabbi Yehuda says, don't even do that which is permitted because you might do something that's also. That's the understanding right now. You know what this sounds like? Okay, we'll see. that when you're thinking about our Mishnah, who do you think this is like? Rabbi Eliezer says you have to guard it, or Rabbi Gamliel. Okay, we'll see in a moment. No, Yakis, you should bloodlet. Don't forget. Why would the animal die? No one will benefit from that. Eloma, we're skipping the parentheses. We have to know the right girsa. Ubilvad sholayasa by mum. Make sure that a mum means don't make it a mum kavua. And the little hole or the big hole, whatever size of the needle, when it heals, yakir, then you can offer it as a carbon. Like it's a non-issue. Now what happens v'im also by mum? What happens if, that's the chashash of Rabbi Yehuda. Once you can start poking, you might make a mum. So he says, enechanami, if you made a mum kavua, hareze lo yishchat olav, like we mentioned, lo yishchat olav implies that you wait until it gets another blemish. By the way, that's something that I wanted to add to yesterday. I didn't respond to your text. When we said yesterday, according to the Tan of the Mishnah, even though we'll learn a Machlokes Tanoim today in the sheet of Rab Shimon, today in the Braisa, but in the way we learned yesterday, the way we're learning right now, that according to the Chachamim and according to Rab Shimon, if you give it a mum kavua, you're not allowed to shecht it. You just saved the life, but you cannot shecht it. But if the animal, shechting it means to eat it on your own. You can't give it as a carbon because it has a mum kavua. You can't eat it because you made the mum kavua. But wait, and at a certain point when the animal will get a new mum kavua on its own, then the kohen can eat it. Okay, that's the meaning. Lo yishchat olav for it, but a new one, you could. Rab Shimon. No one. But since the animal is not being offered on the altar because of a mum that was inflicted by the bloodletting, so then you can't eat it because of that blemish. Wait until it gets, every animal gets a blemish. You're young. Look at us. Just a matter of time for an animal to be blemished. Has to be a blemish that happened without human intervention. Exactly. You'll find out, Aviv. You'll get there. Amen. We have to live to get there. Rab Shimon Omer, Yakiz, that was the biggest chiddush. You know what? Bloodletted from the lip. He doesn't care. One of the words that we learned yesterday is that Rab Shimon holds that an animal that is so sick that without intervention will die is already a balmum. So who does it sound like? Rabbi Yeshua, basically. In other words, it's blemished anyways. What do I care? Even though if you're going to bloodlet it from the lip, just for the record, you won't be allowed to eat it because of this blemish. Okay, so then wait until it gets a blemish on its own. The Chachamim and Rab Shimon are basically on one side against Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda is the one that says don't touch it. The difference between Rab Shimon and the Chachamim is the Chachamim say, why would you make it a mum kavua? Rab Shimon, the Rashbi holds it's already from mumt. It's ruined anyways. What do I care? Yes, Yakir. Okay, now we're going to compare them. So says the Gemara, Rababo b'shem da'amoyre Rabbi Lazar. Now this is his take. He says, I'll tell you, Asya, that the Tan Rabbi Yehuda and B'chayros, don't touch it. Now you have a better insight into what Rabban Gamliel is saying. And I would like to use, everyone over here has another take on this. Let's go with the Marafulda today. Now, I'm not going to begin from the beginning. Go the second line under the Gemara. In the beginning of the line, already in middle of the Mara, that Rabbi Yehuda, the Sfirale, Afilu Meis, even though you know it's going to die, Ein Makizaloi. This will give you an understanding of also the way he understands Rabbi Yehuda and the way he understands Rabban Gamliel. Ke Rabban Gamliel, the Amar lo yichadish b'davar. Yichadish b'davar means don't do anything. Don't even touch it. What Rabbi Eliezer says, make it better. Don't make it better. Leave it the way it is. And keep your finger. You know what? Let's keep on reading. Loi lisakna. I'm in the Marafulda. Don't. First of all, when you say the words tikkun, what would be the tikkun? You have to just understand because you can use that word in both directions. He's clarifying himself. Fixing it would mean ki Rabbi Yeshua. You know why fixing it is? Because the worst thing is something to be hanging. Hanging means nish tahed, nish tahen. Once Trumas Tameh, we keep on mentioning Truma dat Tameh, at least you can benefit from burning it. There's a nuance that we never spoke out, just to speak out over here. Grain could be burnt. You can throw it in the fireplace. Oil can mamish be burnt. You put it to feed a candle. What you don't burn wine, just a detail. The burning of wine, as an example, they used to do ziluf. Ziluf means that people used to have earthen floors. Today's Rosh Hashanah LeChasidus, the Baal Shem Tov, as for a parnasa, before he revealed himself, one of his jobs was he was a floor man. Dira b'tachtoinim. And you would put on people's homes a fresh layer of fresh earth, clay. Now, at some point, it gets very dried out, and then dust begins to rise. So the way they would keep the dust down is they would sprinkle the floors. So the Stam people, they would sprinkle it with water. But the fine schmeckers, that's Yiddish for the Beverly Wood people. Oh, they're not going to put water. They're going to put wine. Because sai, it keeps the dust down, and it gives a good aroma. If you have your father's wine. My wine won't give it a good aroma. It will smell like vinegar. So you have to get that. So by the way, that will be a permissible use of Truma dat Tameh. You're not being mizalzel with it. There's nothing else you can do with it. That's why you're rectifying it. When these barrels are teluya, not like Rav Meir of yesterday, that you can burn it. No. We hold that Truma teluya, you have to wait. You leave it hanging. So you can fix it like Rabbi Yeshua, Shesfira lei, Yanichena b'makam aturfa, Kadesha tatame, and now the wine with the heter oil is ziluf. That's the ziluf. Tahashta lo yichazi lemida. So what does Rabban Gamliel say? Ella lo yichadish ba. Hachinam is fira lei Rabbi Yehuda. That lo yakizenu loy. Don't bloodlet this bukhar. The Yanichena. And you nervous, then you have to leave it. Afilu sheyamus. In other words, you can fix it. What's the fixing of the Bukhar? Fixing of the Bukhar would be to bloodlet it in a way where you're going to give it a blemish, even though we already said that even according to Rashbi, when you give it a blemish, now you can't eat it anyways. First of all, we'll see a Braisa that's even more lenient, but even according to Rab Shimon, you can't eat it because of this blemish. But at some point, when it gets its own blemish, because of age, you could eat it. And if you won't intervene, it's going to die. So you're being mesak in it. It's more than that. By Truma was holy. What's the fixing of the wine in our Mishnah? Itaka won't be holy. Elama, you can use it. Same thing by the carbon. You can't fix it to make it through oil and mizbeach. That's not happening. But at least you can fix it that you can eat it. It's very similar to the word tikkun. So the Rabbi Gamliel that says al yichadush b'davar means don't be a chacham, don't fix things, leave it the way it is. Back in the Gemara, the Rabbanan who hold that do something in a way where it does not become blemished. What does that sound like, Rabbi Eliezer? What does Rabbi Eliezer say in our Mishnah? That truma, you have to safeguard it. You have to safeguard it. It's teluya. I don't care. Safeguard it. Chama say the same thing. A bechor is holy. It's about to die. Safeguard it. How do you safeguard the bechor? Heal it in a way where you make your effort not to give it a mum kavua. That Rabbi Eliezer and Gabaldik, and this we already learned yesterday. Ude Rab Shimon kid Rabbi Yeshua. We already had this part yesterday. In other words, since the animal right now is going to die anyway. Let's go back to our Mishnah, the wine is never going to be consumed by the kohen anyway. That's not happening. So what do? What does Rab Shimon say? Give it a mum kavua. What does Rabbi Yeshua say? So you have to remember what we learned yesterday. In our Mishnah, it's not exactly the same, because in our Mishnah, what did Rabbi Yeshua say? Don't give it a mum kavua. Expose it to tumah. But we learned that this version of our Mishnah is not the way Rab Shimon knows Shitas Rabbi Yeshua. According to Rab Shimon, very much like Rabbi Meir, we put them together. That was what we learned the last few days. They actually hold that Rabbi Yeshua says, "Be metamed b'yodaim." It mamash fits. Give it blood. Let it make it a mum kavua. make it tamei. The only difference will be is that in our Mishnah, according to Rav Shimon's version of Rabbi Yeshua, according to Rav Meir, like the Chavraya said like the Chavraya, that the Reish of the Mishnah, it's not Rav Meir. Once you are metamed the chavius, what do you do with it? You right away can use it for ziluf. You can right away use it for fuel. According to the current understanding of Rab Shimon, you can bloodlet it, give it a mum kavua, but there's one detail. Here, there's another rule that by a bechar that was given a blemish by a human being, you're not allowed to use it for your own personal usage, even though you were allowed to do it. So that's the only difference. But at some point, it's going to get its own blemish, and then you'll be able to eat it. Now, the Gemara says, I want you to know, and this is, I understand the flow, because when we're saying that Rab Shimon is like Rabbi Yeshua, when we want to mamish make them equal, you should know, V'tanei b'shem Rab Shimon, there's a braisa that says the opinion of Rab Shimon that makes it mamish like Rabbi Yeshua. Rabbi Yeshua lefi girsas Rab Shimon, that just like Rabbi Yeshua according to Rab Shimon, according to Rav Meir holds that you can contaminate it and right away use it. That when Rab Shimon says over there in Bechayres that you can bloodlet it from the lip, from the eyelid, from who knows where, make it a mum kavua, not only are you allowed to do it, but now the kohen can right away shecht it and eat it. Because since he was allowed to make the mum, there's no kanas on him. That's the braisa. V'tani b'shem Rabbi Shimon yakis v'af al pishu mischaven lasois by mum. The Marafuld explains not only that you can right away use it. So now it's even better that Rab Shimon and Rabbi Yeshua is the same. The problem is the Mishnah in Bechayres doesn't say this. The Mishnah in the Bechayres says that Rab Shimon says you can make it a mum kavua, but you can't eat it. So you can't do something that you mamish fixed it. You almost fix it, but you don't actually fix it. But they're insisting that Rabbi Yeshua and Rab Shimon are saying the same. So could you reconcile it with our Mishnah? The Gemara says, yeah. Now you get why we had a few daf. We're going back to the Chavraya. What's the second case of our Mishnah? I know that the second case of the Mishnah is a different case, but what's the second case of the Mishnah? What did Rabbi Yeshua say? That you can be metamed biyudayim. That you can be metamed biyudayim. Take the keli tamei and be metamed. So the Gemara says that if you're not going to follow the braisa, even if you don't follow the braisa, I'm still going to tell you that Rab Shimon is mamish Rabbi Yeshua. But you know which Rabbi Yeshua? The second Rabbi Yeshua of our Mishnah. Va'asi ke Rabbi Yeshua acharoya. Guys, this is beautiful. Beautiful. And now, Daf Pei Gimel Amud Beis, and this is important. I think the most important thing is it's not written over here. Everything that we said now is going to be argued with Amud Beis. And that's a very important way of understanding when Chazal compare two Mishnahs together. They're not only compatible because they share the same halacha. They're compatible because we're saying that the logic behind it is the same. The moment you see that a machlokes tanoim has to do with how you interpret psukim, you cannot compare dinim of kachim and the dinim over here in Trumas at all. That's the way we're going to learn the Gemara. That Rabbi Bo b'shem Rabbi Shimon ben Lakish argues with the above. Don't compare one case to the other. You're telling me that why does Rabbi Yehuda say don't do anything? Heal the animal. Because he holds al yichadash b'davar. Has nothing to do with that. Has nothing to do with it. He actually has a pasuk from Parshas Re'eh that he interprets that pasuk to mean that the moment an animal is a bechar, you may never bloodlet it. It's a din in kedushas kachim. Don't bloodlet it. The only option you have is shecht it as a carbon, shecht it for you if it has a mum. Other than that, you're not allowed to touch it. You should know that nowadays, when you have a bechar, if it has kedushas bechar, animals today could have a kedushas bechar unless there's a goyish partner. People find ways not to have that. You're not allowed to bathe the animal. You know that? Because when you bathe an animal, you wash an animal, whoever here has the dogs, you comb it, you might make a blemish. So a bechar, traditionally, you had in all the villagers, we had the animals that had kedushas bechar, and no one touched it, so it stunk. So there's a Yiddish expression, heilig bist du, aber stinken stinkst du, that comes from the bechar, that some holy people stink because the bechar was holy, and because of the holiness, not physically. That people bathe, hopefully. Talking about that just because someone is holy doesn't mean that he doesn't have a bad order. That's a very good Chassidish word. But let me go over here. And we're going to have various psukim, and I love this. I love this when we learn Kachim and the Bavli. I'm going to Parshas Re'eh in Pedig Tezvav Pasik Chav Gimel, but I want to read the earlier psukim. First of all, we read this every Yom Tov. Kol HaBachar Asher Yivalet. So this is Bein Ba'aretz, this is Bein Chutz La'aretz, that a Bachar has Kedushas Bachar. Whether from the three domesticated types, which is Bakar is cows, oxen, that's called Bakar only. And Soin, we know, includes two types, Shepsalach, sheep, and goats. Both of them have the name of Tsoin. These are the three types that if the first offspring of the mother is a male, it's automatically born holy. And you're not allowed to work with it. You're not allowed to shear by a sheep. What? Yeah. And ideally, you should shech the animal when it's one within the first year. Chitas, whoever remembers chitas. If you didn't, it's still good. But don't, we want to eat it right away. Now, in a pasuk, if there is a permanent blemish, the examples the Torah gives, or koil mumra, now it loses the kedusha. Again, this is the only kachim that doesn't have to be redeemed. Don't forget, it belongs to the kohen. So now it's like a gift. Means it doesn't have to be in the Beis Hamikdash. Wherever you are, you can eat it. Because it loses the kedusha. But the blood you're not allowed to eat. Why does the Torah have to write the blood you would have to eat? So Zajac Rashi, I'm reading Rashi in Chumash. That hoyel v'kulei heter haba michlal yisuru. This is an animal that was Kaddish. An animal that's Kaddish is not allowed to be shechted out of the Beis Hamikdash. Other psuli hamikdashim have to be redeemed. Here, there's something new. The Torah is telling you if it gets blemished, that which was prohibited automatically is permitted. So one would have thought you can even have the blood. The blood is prohibited. Now that it got blemished, you can eat it. So the Torah, so yochel yehei afadam muter. So that's why Talmud loyme rakas dom loy soichel. Atkan Chumash Rashi. What Rashi in Chumash does not explain is the next words, al ha'aretz tishpechenu kamoim. Why do you have to write that? Lama. That's what the Gemara is saying. That's the limud. That's a limud. Talmud Rabbi Yehuda, since it says rak, es domi loy soichel. Now that's needed, like we learned Rashi. But now it says al ha'aretz tishpechenu kamoim. You know what that ending of the verse is telling you? A new din. That lo hitarti l'chadamai elo l'shoifchan. That a b'char will only have his blood spilled one way or the other. Either a carbon in the Beis Hamikdash because it's unblemished, or whenever it's blemished, be'oifen, that even midrabanan, we are allowed to eat it, then shecht it and eat it. So when you shecht an animal, you're gonna, the blood will leak out, but you're never allowed to remove blood from a b'char in any other way. In other words, it's a din. You're not allowed to bloodlet. This has nothing to do with Rabbi Gamliel of Ali Chadash B'David. It's a din concerning kachim that a b'char is not allowed to be bloodlet. By the way, that also answers, like you were saying, Yakir. What mum? To make a mum, you have to be a shlamazel. Bloodletted. You're right. Nothing to do with the mum. The Torah says al ha'aretz tishpechenu kamoim. We shech the animal, either kachim or chulin. Other than that, no removing of the blood. But this would also mean if the animal today gets sick, you can't take it to a vet. You can't operate on it. You can't take its blood out. Oh, so Masav Abamari, we had him right yesterday. The brother of the Rabbi Yossi. Hold on. How can you teach the words al ha'aretz tishpechenu kamoim is telling you a din that you're not allowed to bloodlet? A few psukim earlier in the same parsha to A. But in Pedig Yud Beis, now I'm going to read a couple of psukim again by Psuli HaMukdashim. Now this is already, you have to really learn Rashi in the Chumash, because the Torah explicitly is not, it doesn't say that the animal got blemished. The Torah is speaking over there, let me just go back, about what, one second, what do we have over here? We have Yud Beis Chav Dalet. The Torah says like this. The Torah is telling you you're allowed to shecht animals outside of the Beis Hamikdash. In the Midbar, there's a machlokes I know between Rabbi Kiva and Rabbi Shmuel, whether you needed b'chlal to shecht, or the only time in the Midbar we were allowed to eat basar taiva was only if you brought it as a carbon shlamim. Everyone lived nearby. When we came into Eretz Yisrael, a chiddush, you don't have to eat meat because it's a carbon shlamim. You can stam eat it. That's the pshat. But we know from Torah Shabbal Peh, Rashi writes, "Elama rak chazak levilti achol hadam." Blood you can eat kadamu anefesh. Lo yisech lenefesh amabaser. Lo yisech lenu alor esishpechenu kamoy. When you read this, the pshat, it doesn't sound like we're talking about Psulei HaMikdashim. If you read Chumash Rashi Chitas and Torah Shabbal Peh, these psukim are talking about a carbon that you made holy, that got blemished, Psulei HaMikdashim. You redeemed it. Now that you redeemed it, the Torah is telling you, you can eat it wherever you want. You don't have to eat it in the Beis HaMikdash. These psukim, according to Torah Shabbal Peh, is speaking about Psulei HaMikdashim. And how does it end? Lo yisech lenu. Don't eat the blood. Al ha'aretz tishbechenu kamoyim. What did we just say right now? What's the meaning of al ha'aretz tishbechenu kamoyim? That you're not allowed to bloodlet. No one ever said that psulei hamikdashim cannot have bloodlet. There's no such a din. That's the kasha. Psul hamikdashim, it also says rak adam lo yisechel tishbechenu kamoyim. And again, if you look inside the chumash, you're going to say, who says psulei hamikdashim? Learn chumash Rashi, and you'll see that those psukim is talking about psulei hamikdashim. So avada, it's a given. No one says Psulei HaMikdashim cannot have bloodlet. So the Gemara says, just because Hashem says the same words here and the same words there, they don't have to mean the same thing. By Bechar, we're standing with our premise that Al Ha'aretz Tishbechenu Kamoyim means don't bloodlet a Bechar. I don't care if it's unblemished or if it's blemished. Never bloodletting. Over there by Psulei HaMikdashim, it's a new din. The reason why the Torah writes the words Al ha'aretz tishbechenu kamoim Amar Rab Chia bar Abba lehechsher isamart ma mayim machshirim af dam machshir. So we know from Parsha Shmini that even if something impure touches foods, for the foods to become susceptible to acquiring tuma, they have to first become muchshar lekabel tuma. In Parsha Shmini, the Torah is speaking explicitly about water. We know Torah Shabbal Peh that there are 7 liquids. Yad Shachadam. Who remembers Yad Shachadam? Yayin Devash, Shemen, Cholov, Tal, and then Dam and Mayim. How do you know? Each one of these liquids have a pasuk that tells you that it is like water. Where do we see that Dam could be machsher? All Zroyim, after it became disconnected. When there was Litzoin Ba'alim, all of the dinim of Hechsher applied to this, all of the 7 liquids. But who told you B'chlal that Dam is machsher? From this pasuk. Al ha'aretz tishbechenu kamoyim, to make a hekesh between Dam and beautiful. So Atkan is Shitas Rabbi Yehuda. Now, both the Chachamim and Rab Shimon, they hold you could bloodlet. That's the Mishnah that we're learning. That means they reject that limud that we had before of Rabbi Yehuda. So he says that what's now that we're going, that the whole Mishnah in Bechayres has to do with psukim, and we have a machlokes whether if an animal is going to die, whether you can, Rab Shimon says, well, it's already considered a balmum, you can lechatchila blemish it, or not. Rab Shimon says there's no more obligation to safeguard it, blemish it. That's also based on psukim, and the Chachamim and Rab Shimon, they both learned their shita from the same pasuk. Rabbi Bo, v'shem Rabbi Yechanan, u'shneim, not Rabbi Yehuda. The Chachamim and Rab Shimon is mikra echad darshu. And now we're going to a pasuk in Parshas Emoir. And if you have a Torah or a Shalom, I was just, all of these psukim, it's a lot geschmacker when you read the whole Hemshech HaPsukim. So we're going into Parshas Emoir. You can see the Torah or Shalom, Vayikra Chav Beis Chav Aleph, Vayikra Chav Beis Chav Aleph, and over there we're speaking about clearly Kachim, Lirtzoimchem Tamim Zachar Babak B'Zav Izim, that you have to offer a sacrifice. The karbanis have to be non-blemished. Then it says koil asher boy mum. Whoa, if an animal gets blemished, then loy sakrivu. Oh, a blemished animal you can't offer. Why? Ki loy l'ratzani Elohem. Then it says v'ish ki yakriv zevach shlomim l'Hashem lefali neder or linadava babakar rabatzoin nachamal. It says tamim yia l'ratzin kol mum liyia boy. Why twice? We just said in the previous pasuk koil asher boy mum loy sakrivu. Here it says kol mum liyia boy. Oh, so here we go. Tamim yia l'ratzin. This is the second pasuk. This is pasuk chaf aleph. Kol mum liyia boy. Rab Shimon Darash. You know why? The second, the pasuk of Aleph repeats, you can't have a blemish. The pasuk number one, pasuk chaf, koil mum liyia boy, is the source where I am not allowed to afflict a blemish. It's not just it shouldn't have a blemish. That's the source that tells me I'm not allowed to make a blemish. Okay, what happens if an animal is already blemished? So that's what Rab Shimon says. The reason why the Torah repeats Nachamol, that Tamim yeh l'ratzin, then kol mum lo yeh boy, only if the animal is Tamim, if the animal is unblemished, then I'm not allowed to blemish it. B'shah shehu l'ratzin ein at r'shoy litam b'mum. Meaning, implying that b'shah she'ein l'ratzin, if the animal is already not going to be accepted by Hashem, it won't find favor in Hashem's eyes. Why? Because it already has a blemish, which according to Rab Shimon and the Chachamim, that includes an animal that's about to die because it's sick. That's Rab Shimon. You lechatchila can afflict it. The Chachamim say, punkt fakert. The reason why the Torah repeats kol mum liyaboy, why twice? The first time is to teach you an animal that's unblemished, don't blemish it. The second pasuk is to tell you that even if the animal already has a blemish, don't make a new blemish. Afilu kulei mumin, that's the kol mum. Beautiful. And what comes out from all of this is the nekuda, since their argument over there is about psukim, don't compare it to our Mishnah over here. Nothing to do. The type of shmira, right, that we have, Trumoisai, by Truma, doesn't follow the same rules of Kachim. Truma and Kachim are two different things. That's really what the whole Amud Beis is all about. And now let's just open up. Chavi Shniya, Shitas Rabbi Eliezer. Simple. Rabbi Eliezer says that no, you cannot capture the wine in a keli that's tummy. Says the Gemara. Rab Chama Barukva, B'Shem Rabbi Yosi B'Rab Chanina. He says the following, that if you have a keli, Shatoy Choytar V'Achoyrev Tameim, as we spoke out in the words of introduction, is that since beverages that are on the level of a Rishon cannot contaminate kelim, but they do contaminate kelim midarabanan, and the Chachamim wanted people to know whether it's Tumah D'Oraisa or Tumah D'Rabanan, because only when Truma or Kachim are Tamei on the level of a D'Oraisa should they be burnt. If Truma or Kachim are Tamei on a rabbinic level, with exceptions, Beis HaPras, but other than the exceptions, then they are not allowed to be burnt. They become Tuluyin. You have to wait until when they become Tamei D'Oraisa. And therefore, the Chachamim wanted for us to remember that it's only a Tumah D'Rabbanan. How do we remember it? By them saying that if liquids touch the interior of a utensil, all of it becomes Tamei. Equal to if it became Tamei from a Tumah D'Oraisa. But if liquids touch the exterior of any utensil, anayazach, only the outside of the utensil is Tamei. Yadayim Shanias is the Rabbanan. Midoraisa, either you're Tamei or you're not. Either the Keli is Tamei or you're not. The Chachamim are the ones that can say, no. The hands are Tamei. The body is good. The outside of the Keli is Tamei. The inside is not. So what happens if you have such a Keli? So he is saying, and we're going to change that tomorrow, that Rabbi Eliezer is Azoy Machmir, that you're not allowed to use a Keli that's Tamei, even if the Keli's interior is Tahor. And you can save the wine and make sure it doesn't touch the outside. No, even that. Rabbi Eliezer is so machmir. Ein mitchamen by davar mimuat afilu lahatzel by davar miruba. You're not allowed to use such a keli. Why? By the way, even if a few drops will go on the outside, it's just a few drops. The most of the wine, vaday will go on the inside. I know. Even though you're going to salvage almost all of it, for the chashash that maybe something in the outside will get hurt. Who does it sound like again? I think. You know what this sounds like? I'm going to go back to Amud Aleph, to Rabbi Yehuda. I know that the Gemara says that Rabbi Yehuda is, the Gemara said on Amud Aleph, Rabbi Yehuda is Rabbi Gamliel. When I learned the Gemara, I was wondering, no, Rabbi Yehuda sounds like the Rabbi Eliezer. So Machmer, he says, don't even, I'm not going with the psukim. I'm going back to the before the psukim. Don't bloodlet. Why shouldn't you bloodlet? You might give it a mum kavua. And that's what you guys were saying. If you know the Rambam, don't think that bloodletting is going to give it a mum kavua that quick. You have to be a real shlamazel. It's a little or nervous then. Don't do that. Same thing over here, that you know how Machmir Rabbi Eliezer is. Don't even use a keli shachayrav to meim, because maybe something will go on the outside. At kedei kach, you have to safeguard it. Maybe. By the way, what I said right now is going to be refuted in next year, and God willing to be continued.